So, so is that that's what's going to happen for the rest of the day then? Just civilization?
Uh Maybe. I've been on a decade-long hiatus from all video games, so maybe I'll play some FIFA. Maybe I'll play some strategy-based games. I don't know. It's a brave new world out there.
Yeah, man. I'm kind of into it too. I was never like a huge video game player, but I
Mhm.
played, have gotten sort of back into them in the last few months. And we just had a discussion pre-show with Josh, our producer, and he loves them. Got us all stoked up. We may lose the rest of the week to Civilization, which is fine because there's not a ton of sports going on right now. This is Awesemo.com's From A to B. I'm Andrew. That's Ben. We are here to talk to you about daily fantasy sports and regular sports and video games and
Questionable.
yeah, we'll see. I don't know. What kind of games were you into when you did play?
I mean, just basically just the sports game. I know it sounds. This probably comes as a shock to most people who see me. Like, I actually was really athletic. I used to just play sports. I didn't play a lot of video games. Um, so now yeah, I used to have Madden, FIFA. That was about it, though. I didn't really mess around with too many of the later games. I missed that boat.
Yeah, I was pretty good at Madden back in the day. Like when I was young, like fresh out of like after college kind of times when I was just playing in bands and working as little as possible and hanging out with my friends all the time. We would have Madden leagues and we would get the new game every year and just each of us would pick. We'd have four people. Each of us would pick one team in the same division, and we would just spend all weekend like drinking
Battling.
box wine and playing Madden against each other. But I have recently gotten back into them. I got a PS4 when I moved to LA, and just as something else to do on some nights. And man, Madden's a lot harder. FIFA's a lot harder.
Like yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I was playing when it was like pixelated, and you could just run like a glitch play. I'm sure they've made some improvements on the video game front.
Yeah, because every year all they would do, there would be something that would work, like a slant would work every single time one year, and then the next year they would make it so if you did the slant twice in a row, it would get intercepted. But then like the hitch route worked every single time or whatever. And it seems like now you actually have to read the defenses and all that kind
Gotta
of
stay
stuff.
ahead of the curve, just like DFS. You got to be ahead of the masses.
Absolutely. And I was never like, I don't have any stick skills. Like I was always bad at shooters and stuff like that. That was never able to do that. You know what? I remember being shocked by this, but when I first met Manny in person, he was like a professional video game. That's why he's so into the Twitch things. He was like a professional video game player when he was like 16.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Played so calm. It's pretty funny.
Wild.
Yeah.
As
cool stuff.
My girlfriend just left the apartment. I'm not sure if she's coming back, if she was listening to the this conversation, but that'll be for tomorrow's pod, I guess.
All right, well, we can talk about video games later. We should get to the two things we actually have to talk about, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But there was a football game last night. There's a golf tournament this week. There's no DFS for it, right? Am I
Nope.
Unprepared? There's nothing. Great.
No. It's yeah, we saw, which you and I think a lot of other people also kind of talked about. We saw some Fitz magic revert back to the pumpkin a little bit.
Yeah.
It was a weird game. To tell you the truth, I didn't catch all of it, but there was a lot happening. Steelers defense got in there. Vance McDonald with the super truck stick. That's really what I took away from it.
Ended Chris Connie's career.
Yeah, he's just that'll stick with him for a while.
He played 11 snaps last night. They just took him out the game afterwards.
Yeah, he said he hurt his knee, but that's a skeptical. Yeah, I mean, how did you do a showdown? Was it any? I was fine in the sense that I just lost like a typical person would lose. No damage, but nothing good either.
I mean, I had a pretty good one. I played some on FanDuel because we were talking with our friends beforehand. Our buddy Deadlift is only playing FanDuel right now. So I threw a few lineups in over there. Those did really well.
They have no defense, which is interesting.
Yeah, I played a lot of Steelers defense captain, thinking the Fitz magic thing. I don't know, whatever. I made 10, 15% on DraftKings. I about doubled up on FanDuel, and then I made some prop bets, like under on Deshaun Watson yardage hit and over on Vance McDonald's yardage hit. was nice. I kind of wish I'd done a little better considering how much Vance McDonald I had, but I didn't play him in the captain spot.
That,
and I don't feel bad about that. Like, I get the game theory of it, but man, like Vance McDonald being the highest scoring player in the game is like such an outlier outcome.
Yeah, I mean, Showdown's one of those things. Pretty much, no matter who's the highest scoring guy, some people are going to have them in the captain, and that doesn't mean that you missed anything. It's just that it's a finite pool, and there's so many people. Like Cameron Brate, not that I thought he was a fine player, I actually had a little, but like if he would have been the highest scoring guy, it would have been hard to imagine me ever going to the captain with him, and that could have been the optimal move. It's just that's what you get with a one-game pool.
Yeah. I've struggled with that, honestly, in Showdown. I think that's been my biggest weakness is not really knowing where to captain it. Because for me, it's like when I'm building a game script, right, I've either got, because like, what I like to talk about is, when you're building a Showdown lineup, just make sure it tells a story, right?
Absolutely.
And every time I make a story, like it's either the number one wide receiver, the quarterback, or the defense that's the captain. Like I can't come up with a story where fucking Vance McDonald goes for 100 yards and like that's the biggest score. But
it's interesting you say that because I've seen people, and I'm sure there's more that I need to do on this front, where it's like they're not just taking the captain pick for their guy who they think is going to perform best. It's that it frees up some space to load up with the other five. Right. And I conceptually am not grasping that, to be honest. Like Antonio Brown was primarily my captain, the Steelers defense. Even a little.
I had a lot of James Conner captain.
Yeah, kind of. But guys that I thought would be the highest scoring person on the slate, and I usually paid the premium. The whole notion of paying for a guy that you think obviously is going to play somewhat well, but he's more of a punt in the captain. There's something to it. I don't know. I think that's something I'm going to have to keep exploring as these slates are not going away. And if I'm going to keep playing them, I really need to figure that out.
Yeah, because, the thing is, the McDonald in the captain spot, because the winning lineup, I want to say, was McDonald in the captain spot with, it was duped a few times, but it was McDonald with, actually, no, I think there were only 2 dupes. I think each dude got $175,000 last night. But it was McDonald captain with both quarterbacks, Mike Evans and Juju instead of Antonio Brown, and then I forget who the 6th person was, but I think it was Brate, probably.
Probably Brate, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense because it gets you the salary to buy a bunch of studs everywhere else. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember, and this could be wrong, but I think the first time we saw the captain thing was during the NBA Finals, I want to say.
Yeah. They started doing that.
And I remember just same concept. To me, it was like, well, obviously you're going to put LeBron or Durant in the captain spot, but that wasn't always the case. Some people were using like David West or something and then you could get LeBron, KD, Steph, Clay, and like Kevin Love, you know what I mean? And it's interesting dynamic. I like I said, that's something I'm going to have to explore as we get going.
Me too. And I have not. Yeah, I'm not quite sure on the strategy for that. You see wacky captains working often, so there's clearly something to it. I don't know. When I was building more, I had success in the first couple rounds of the playoffs in the NBA last year, and I wasn't worried about the captain. I was worried just about the combo of players, and it adds another level. It makes it easier to not get duped, which I guess is nice. But I don't know. I just got to get better at that. Got to work on it a little more.
Yeah, I like the concept of. I actually thought, and our buddy Tim, he had suggested, it was kind of a joke, but it was a great idea on Twitter to use the captain spot for the 30-man golf, and that would have been awesome. I really hope next year they do that. Would have been a cool wrinkle, and I do like that it makes an added step of stuff. It is kind of a killer when I've certainly had a team or two during these showdowns where I've had all 6 of the optimum guys and I just had the wrong captain. That really hurts sometimes.
Yeah, that's no fun. We mentioned this before once, but it was the Giants and Cowboys game. Ray of Hope, who's a very, very good DFS player, had a unique lineup for $200K for first. with very little time left. It had Evan Ingram on it, but he was not the captain. And it wasn't as time expired, but it was like essentially the last play. Eli throws a touchdown to Ingram, who he has on his team, but then 4 Ingram captain teams passed him, and he ended up in 5th for cost him $190,000.
Yeah, that stings a bit.
Yeah, that's brutal. When it's your own guy, I mean, just like whatever, we all have bad beats, but when it's your own guy that just beat you, that's
that is a tough one.
Mm-hmm. It is. From a real life perspective, I will say and how it applies to DFS. What the Steelers did to Fitzpatrick, I don't know. This was probably some weakness on my part, but what the Steelers did to Fitzpatrick is what I was thinking they might be able to do to Mahomes. They just, they tricked him. The Steelers run a gimmicky defense. It's a lot of blitzes. It's a lot of zone. It's a lot of funny looks. And this is where I feel like maybe I screwed up, because this is clearly not true of Ryan Fitzpatrick. But part of me was like, well, and I played a lot of Steelers last night just thinking that it would happen. But, part of me was like, well, smart guy is going to have an easier time.
Harvard education.
That's stupid.
Yeah, he's just a gun. That's the way. It's more the mentality. Obviously, that's more the mentality of how they play. Like Ryan Fitzpatrick. Even last night, you look at his numbers. He had 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3. That's just what he does. That's what I thought Mahomes would do a lot.
Yeah, and I think he still will.
Yeah, he will.
Pittsburgh's defense is bad, but they can confuse you, and they successfully did so to Fitz. Mahomes just carved him up.
He certainly did. What do you think the Bucs do next week?
Who are they playing next week?
They're at the Bears, which Bears 20. We're not going to talk too much because we have the week we're going to be breaking down the slate. But Bears defense at home 2,600. I'll be having some of that. You think it's going to be Jameis? You think they'll stick with Fitz?
I think that's like your cash play. The Bears are like a supercharged version of what the Steelers do. They run a lot of weird zone stuff. They run a lot of, keeping safeties back.
And they have good players.
And they have really good players. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 2,600 Bears D is going to be popular and for good reason.
I don't even care if it's Jameis, honestly.
That might be better.
Yeah, because he overthrows everybody, and you can't overthrow into a zone. You're gonna get killed. You overthrow against man, and it's fine. But yeah.
No, I don't think it matters. I'm interested to see where they go. Obviously, if Bucs win that game, I'd say there's almost no chance you're pulling them. But that was, I think that was an interesting performance in the sense it wasn't bad enough where it's like, all right, they're going to bench him. And it certainly wasn't good enough where there's no decision. I think it's kind of a toss-up where they ultimately go. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think you're right. We will have to wait and see. He's had a very exciting start to the season. Happy for the Bucs fans.
It's going to be a weird week. Just again, we're not going to dive into it too much for the Baker stuff. Just the buys have started, so there is one less game. There's certainly going to be different decisions than the first 3 weeks. I think this will be a starkly different conversation when we get into it.
Yeah. And we have an awesome Thursday night game for once.
We do.
Rams and Vikings. That's gonna be cool to see. Both teams missing significant defensive pieces. The Rams are down both cornerbacks, and then did you read what happened with Everson Griffin?
Yeah, he I believe he didn't play against the Bills either, but he's now. From what I read, he was threatening people to shoot them. That can't be good.
No, and he's a phenomenal player. He's a big part of that line. Whatever. That line's so stacked with Linval Joseph and Sheldon Richardson too.
They've got players. Yeah, you talked about this. I think it was yesterday. The Vikings kind of have a full-on unit, and the Rams have 2 of the best at 2 different levels. Now, when those guys start getting hurt, the drop-off's severe.
Yeah.
So we'll see how they can mask that.
Yeah, the Vikings are better equipped to lose a player or two just because they're definitely deeper, but the Rams have the monster studs. Yeah, it's because it's not like they're gonna. The Vikings still don't have a very good offensive line, and the Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh are still healthy, so there's going to be some pressure. But we'll see what the Rams are rolling out there for cornerback. I am of the belief that in pass defense, it's more important. The more important part of the pass defense is the line play rather than the cornerback play. Just because, like, if you get pressure on the quarterback, the cornerbacks don't have to be as good if there is pressure on the quarterback, and it's much easier for. It's much easier in a lot of ways. How am I trying to say this? Like the way that the wide receiver has the advantage against the cornerback, right? Like the wide receiver is the offensive player. The defensive linemen are the offensive players too. They have a massive advantage over the offensive linemen. Like the offensive linemen are the guys playing defense, trying to hold off the dudes coming at them. So it's kind of a role reversal. Like wide receivers have advantages on the cornerbacks, but like the defensive linemen have huge advantages over offensive linemen. And when you've got nasty defensive linemen coming at you, like it's just a brutal game. And we've seen that. Khalil Mack, Von Miller, Aaron Donald, like those guys are just the most important players. JJ Watt, I mean, he had a bunch of sacks yesterday.
Yeah, he made a play. He almost had a fumble. It's true. Yeah, you hear that on both sides of it, where it's like if the quarterback's holding the ball for 8 seconds, you hear announcers all the time say it doesn't really matter. No one can really pass block for that long. And on the flip side, if the quarterback can hold it for 8 seconds, you hear them say all the time, no one can cover for that long. It's just not possible. It's all timing based, and that's the chess match. If you can disrupt that timing one way or another, you'll have a huge advantage.
Yeah, and that's what makes guys like Aaron Rodgers, I mean, specifically Rodgers, but also Russell Wilson, like so dangerous is that they can kind of move around and buy extra time. So they throw guys, you get like Doug Baldwin and Jordy Nelson are not the fastest dudes in the world, but they get enough time, their guys can throw them open. So
it's true.
Anyway, that's football. We had a game last night. Game on Thursday is going to be fun. Bears defense are at home against Fitzmagic or Jameis this weekend.
Yeah, that's one to take note. Like I said, I haven't looked at the slate in full. That did catch my eye. It's going to be a pretty juicy spot. Bears are pretty good. Should have lost, but
Cardinals. Yeah, they don't have a quarterback, man. It's tough. I mean, you feel bad for them. I agree with what the Bears have done, essentially. Like, I think it's a good idea to, it's like Philly did it too. The Rams are doing it. You build the super team when you've got the rookie quarterback contract, because then you have salary cap to spend on other dudes. Unfortunately, the Bears rookie quarterback contract, it's not a very good quarterback, so that's going to be trouble.
No, but he's young. He's very raw. He didn't play that much in college, and you got to do a better job. I mean, not everyone's going to be Sean McVay, but figure it out. Get ways to get this guy better weapons. Get ways to get him better targets. He doesn't look good. I'll give you that. He's certainly, unlike Goff, he doesn't seem as and maybe I'm reading too much into this. He doesn't seem as content with following like a tight script. He tries to make some crazy throws where the Rams, and maybe it's a product of just them, the success, it seems like they really just are smart. They stay within themselves. Trubisky does some things where it's just like, what are you thinking? Don't do that.
Right. And Nagy's from, I can't remember, is he from the Rams or the Chiefs? It's all the same kind of coaching tree.
Andy Reid's got them all under the big umbrella.
Yeah. Because Andy Reid is like I don't know, is he the best offensive coach of all time? Whatever. That's, I mean, sort of hyperbolic, but not really, honestly. Better than Chip Kelly didn't take his throne.
Yeah, he's at UCLA right now, just getting run out of town already. They're just awful. Chip's got to turn it around in the college world. But
yeah. But I mean, Andy Reid is a big part of like Pat Mahomes' success. Like you watch that stuff, like the plays they have, it's just weird shit. I'm not good enough at X's and O's to know exactly how it works, but it's just different looking stuff. And you're like, wait, where did that guy come from? And he's wide open now, and it's really cool.
The one thing that typically happens though is when people catch up to it. I mean, we've seen time and time again with Andy Reid. They're 6-0, they're 5-1, and they finished 10-6. And first round exit. I don't know why that is per se, and we'll be interested to see with Mahomes and specifically. Obviously, I know we say this every show. There's going to be regression, but is it going to be to the point where he's truly struggling, or is he just going to be a normal, very good quarterback?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're right about the Chiefs. I guess I don't know. That is more them. But like Philly made it to the NFC Championship game, like I don't know, 5 or 6 times in his tenure there. Like they were no joke.
Certainly no joke. I think he's a notorious fast starter. There's no doubt about that. These teams out of the gate all the time, and then some of them really collapse.
And he's pathetic with timeouts and all of that.
That's not his forte. No.
But anyway, you'd think that Nagy would be. I mean, the point on that was more that it's weird to see Trubisky doing some of that stupid stuff because Nagy is from that tree and should be. You would think that they would be doing more of the make life easier for him kind of stuff, but because he supposedly was super accurate in college.
Yeah, I mean, in the 7 games that he played, he really didn't play a lot, and he played in North Carolina. It was not a stretch, but you just didn't have a lot on him. I thought he was kind of an unknown, similar to Josh Allen. Different factors, obviously. Josh Allen played in just like a bootleg conference. Didn't see many Big 5 teams, and when he did, he struggled. So that's something that's a little atypical. But I think in the right system, these guys, most of them can find ways to be effective.
Yes, fair enough. All right, let's talk a little golf. We got a big tournament this week. This is usually
Paulina Gretzky is in Paris. She's chilling. I saw a picture with her and Brooks's significant other. Looks like Deej might be all right.
All right. There we go.
USA. I think USA's got on lock now.
Your boy's back. So we have the Ryder Cup, which is a tournament they have every once in a while. I'm going to let you do the heavy lifting on this, but we have America the Beautiful going over to France to take on some spineless, gutless, lily-livered Euros.
Yeah, we got the Ryder Cup. It's in Paris. Americans really, although they've been on a nice run, they're the champs right now. They have not won in Europe in like 25 years, which is shocking to me. Like I really am stunned about that.
Yeah, if you look at this team, like if you look at these teams, the 12-on-12, like it should be a freaking bloodbath. Like the American team is so good. The first thing that stood out to me though, and because I know there's I know the hipster pick is to take Europe right now, like that they're because they always win in Europe. Europe is a dog for good reason. But one thing you have always been sort of a harper on is like when people play the week before on a different continent, that the traveling narrative gets a little tough. I will say the American team, other than Spieth fraud, like the other 11 dudes all made it to the Tour Championship because they're awesome. And only half of the Euros made it that far because they're gutless and they don't even want to play over here.
Yeah, they're smart. They're resting. Yeah, I don't know how big a deal. I am stunned there wasn't a week off. Some of the Americans like Justin Thomas, I don't know who else was over there. They went to Europe for the French Open to play this course specifically because it was where the Ryder Cup is going to be. So maybe that will pay dividends. I'm rooting for the U.S., of course. Think Europe's going to win. You're
not rooting for anybody, man. Come on, don't play like you're not just a degenerate gambler.
U.S. win. I am American. I hope Rory destroys, but I don't want to see Ian Poulter hoisting up any trophies. It's going to be interesting. I mean,
but do you want to see Patrick Reed hoisting up? I mean, like, listen,
I don't mind Patrick Reed. I like Patrick Reed more than most. I think Europe is going to win. Plus 150, I would take them. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, it's cool to see the pairings. It seems like Tiger and Bryson are going to be paired up. Obviously, Spieth and Reed. I think you'll see JT and Ricky is something that's usual. The European side is the one to me that's more of a wild card. Like they could go say they go Stenson and Noren if they want to do like the Swedish pairing. Usually Stenson more like a Rose kind of guy. I don't know. There's a lot of ways they could go on that side.
All right, time out. How does this work?
So, so there's all different types. You got singles and doubles. You have best ball and kind of foursomes in the sense. So there are some where it's alternate shot. You're paired up and you hit and then your partner hits. Then there's others where all four of you are playing and you're just taking the best score. And you get point. It's all match play, so you get points on that. And then at the end, there's singles matches, so it's just 1-on-1, and that's basically where you go. I believe it's 14 points for the U.S. to win. They're the champs, so if it's a tie, they win. Europe needs 14.5 to take it. Okay. 28 points total in the thing.
So, all right. So, like, how does it when we're Thursday morning when it starts, right?
Yeah.
What happens first? What's going on?
So I don't know exactly what's first, but say it's a 4-ball best ball. So like there are teams that go out. The captains will announce. I don't know exactly how they're drafting, but it's like, okay, Tiger and Bryson. And then Europe will say, okay, Rory and Olesen. It's back and forth. It's kind of like a chess match. So they go out, they play. You either get a win or you half it, and you each get a half a point, depending on what happens. So you do all that, then they move to the next format, etc. And then eventually late is the singles matches where not everyone, there are certain things you don't have to be in. So like there's a chance that like Sergio, if he's just horrendous, won't do as much, where they'll have Rory going out as much as possible.
Okay.
But it's there's some guys like Poulter, Reed, notoriously good at this type of stuff, and they can do some of the heavy lifting. There's also, I think, a cool element of like, do you just sacrifice? So like, say it's Rory and Rahm, do we just put like, Finau and Webb or something and just like give up, but put Bubba out there, or do we like attack it with Spieth and Reed?
Yeah, I don't know, man.
But Tiger's like, it's weird. He's playing as good as anyone. It's who would have thought that he would be like a key asset on this team? Yeah.
Did I undersell how big of a deal that was on yesterday's podcast? I feel like we probably didn't spend enough time on that.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, you've said this already. I think there's not having seen where he was at previously kind of aids in maybe underselling that. Like where he was in his prime and then that downfall, it's a ridiculous story. Like it's really unreal.
Yeah. Like, I remember him being like, I don't live under a cave. Like I'm a somewhat of a sports fan. I just didn't really care about golf, but I remember that, Tiger Woods is like one of the most famous people in the world. I know that he was a huge deal. He was in every advertisement. I know he was killing everyone. And you just expected him to win everything. And he was the greatest golfer of all time by the time he was 30. And I know that it sort of fell off really big, but I don't know. I guess like the amount of stuff I've seen about it the last few days, people are just wild about it.
And it shows. I mean, the ratings, the excitement, even the safe, and this isn't Tiger related, but at the same time, it kind of is, even though he's not playing. DraftKings put up, we don't have golf this week, but we do have golf next week for the swing season, and the Safeway tournaments are pretty good.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I think it's just because golf is on the mind for a lot of people. So Ryder Cup is fun. The President's Cup, which is the U.S. versus the rest of the world, not Europe, is really just kind of a silly thing, and it's kind of stupid. But the Ryder Cup really gets intense. It's a memorable thing. It's one I actually look forward to watching with non-money on the line.
All right.
But yeah, I don't know. It is different. Put it like this: even in his prime, Tiger was not good at the Ryder Cup. Like he is not a notoriously good dude. I don't know if he just didn't care. So it'll be interesting to see if he becomes leading the charge.
Why? Do you know why that is?
No, I mean, he smoked, like he's murdered match play stuff. So it's not that. Maybe it's just The format, not liking it, he probably was tough to pair. I could see that being a cause. Because it is difficult. Like you don't want. I was talking to Pat about this. Like you don't want to be hitting shots that you've never hit. Like if you pair JT with a guy who doesn't drive it far, their approaches are from such an awkward distance.
Yeah.
So it's like you probably want to match them up so they're hitting shots that they're used to hitting. And vice versa. Like why if JT has to hit long irons, that's kind of weird for him. But you find pairings that work and then you stick with them, and that's what the captains do. We'll see what Jim Furyk can muster up.
We will see that. I don't know. Should be kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, it's definitely fun, and it's nice to get a little break from golf. Safeway, I mean, I really thought there was going to be a break. I misread this whole schedule. I can't believe that. I mean, next week on Tuesday, we will be breaking down a field.
Yeah, we will.
Like that's kind of crazy. That doesn't feel accurate, but it is.
Yeah, they haven't. Have they announced the field for the Safeway yet? Sorry, I was looking at something else.
I have not seen it. I would imagine there's a pretty tentative field on like the Safeway website or something. It's certainly no pricing that in DK terms.
Yep. Cool.
Yes.
I lived about half an hour from the Safeway, from the Silverado Resort when I first moved to California, and I wanted to go last year. I went home. One of my best friends got married, so I missed the tournament because I came home for that. And then like it was like the day after the tournament, the night the tournament ended, that like the fires broke out, and that was insane. Ripped through that whole area. Cool.
I think it's the Brendan Steele domination tournament, I believe.
Yeah, this was Grillo's first win. This is and Steele always kicks ass here. I think Phil plays here sometimes for some reason.
I'll be interested to see if he does that coming off. Like he's over there. That's a guy. Like we have Phil on the team. That should be lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It for me, I try to I guess I struggle a little with balancing multiple sports. Like my mind is so football focused right now. The thought of building golf lineups, especially because I do it by hand, it actually is a little daunting. So it gets tricky during the swing season.
Yeah, for sure. Last year during the swing season was when I got really buried with the building the NBA model and then getting that off the ground. It was just, I think, more work than we were sort of expecting it to be. And I was basically just hosting you and Tim for the swing season during on the podcast. I think that was when I called something the wrong state.
The wrong
yeah.
Yeah, but it's it's just something that you have to just be cognizant of. There's only a finite amount of time, and that's why I try to, make sure I'm in the right tournaments, in the right structures, stick to what I feel most comfortable doing. Because if you don't, it's just a lot of times I look back and I'm just like, why was I playing in some of these things? I was not ready for it. It's not the plan of attack that I wanted.
Yeah, I haven't usually played as heavy in the swing season. I mean, it's a lot of like the people that are playing it's only hardcores for the most part. And then in, January is when it's the real sort of season starts. And that I feel like is much more because football's ending. So you're getting more casual people there. That's when you can start to really take over, I feel like. But
it seems, and it kind of resembles in most sports, there's an element of I guess preseason football and NBA are the easiest. Swing season, if you've been paying attention to the web guys, you can get a jump on people that we'll see priced in a different tier come January. Mm-hmm. And that's why I have not done that. I will start doing some research. Our Slack chat is awesome for that. Last year, it was a huge asset because people have picked up stuff on these guys who are coming off the web.com tour. And you can get a couple names and buy early on dudes who, are not going to be known to the general public just yet.
Yeah. Our dear friend Carl, still active in Slack. He will be talking web guys for sure.
Yeah, it's different. It's not household names, and you're right. Most people, you're not going to get that many randoms playing golf at a time like this, so it makes everything harder. Cash is more, only regulars at this point, but still can attack it.
Yeah, and I mean, most of the guys in the Ryder, almost everyone in this Ryder Cup thing is going to play one of these tops. Like this is kind of AAA season. You start seeing the swing season. Aaron Wise is going to be 10, 5, 11K at a lot of these events. It's just, and he should be.
Absolutely should be. And I kind of like that in some aspects. It forces people to do research. And if you uncover stuff, you really can be in an advantage. It's tricky. It's a double-edged sword because, like I said, I'm focused on football a lot. If you don't do the research, you're going to have trouble making teams because you're not going to know who some of these people are.
Yeah.
And you can't really bank on that. But at the same time, it's an opportunity to maybe gain an edge here and there on the field.
Yeah, you can start looking through because a lot of like projection systems, and especially not even projection systems necessarily, but a lot of the sort of stats databases you look at will have, like a site like Fantasy National has PGA Tour events as their database. So like I remember last year looking, the JT Poston continued to be like pretty cheap during the swing season, and someone like that becomes like, oh, this guy's pretty good. And I remember going through and looking and seeing like, oh, he missed the cut at all 3 of the Web.com Tour playoff events. And it's like that's not going to show up on a site that's saying over the last however many rounds this guy's done this. So you want to, especially with these guys, like you want to make sure you look and check out what happened at the last few web events. Not just, if they won a web event, that's not that big of a deal, but like it starts to be these are sort of hybrid web PGA Tour style events. They're not as strong as what you see. This ain't the Genesis.
No, it's not. And this is where you're going to see, we've seen this time and time again. Guys are going to win here, and they're not going to win for a while. Like people get wins in the swing season that's why they play, because it's a great opportunity to secure your card.
And get to the freaking Tour Championship like Patton Kizzire. He won twice. Right. Both of his wins were were they both in the swing season?
They were early in the year, if not in the swing. Like I think he won Maricopa where Ricky was playing, but it was early, and it just speaks to the quality of the fields. Like you have guys who can come out of nowhere.
Yep. That is true. All right, cool.
I did want to talk real briefly just about, and it does filter a little into the golf and into football, just the difference between, there's so many tournaments these days with 200,000 people, and then there's tournaments with 200 people, and just kind of the differences of that, of kind of just cognizant building and just what you're doing. I know for me, I build by hand, so naturally I'm more inclined to play things with less entries, because I do think having 150 teams is very useful if you know what you're doing. More plus EV bullets are good. 20 maxes, 3 maxes, 5 maxes, single entry, that you're more close. For me, I'm maxing those, and I'm not maxing the other ones. How I do that, I guess, is what I'm kind of talking about, and it's more just being... You see sometimes, and maybe this is just my opinion, I see people where it's like, wow, you're building a team that you may win this 200-man once every 2 years by 70 points. And if you don't do that, you're busting. And that's not what you're going for, that in the milli, once every 2 years, once every 10 years, whatever. You want to almost try to visualize your teams as winning by a reasonable margin. Of course, it's nice to win by 50, but if you're taking such an extreme upside in a tournament with a finite number of people like that, I don't think that's the best idea. And I have seen a lot of people do that.
Yeah. And that is what you're really good at. That's why you like shitty sports, and why you like, just like tough game. You like the hard courses, you like the cut makers, do you like the Danny Amendolas of the world where getting 13 points out of a $4,000 player is actually helpful to you. And that's certainly more true in smaller field tournaments.
Yeah, it's more about just kind of keeping it together than going nuclear. I just think though you want to be cognizant of the type of team that you're making. Stacking up something to the extreme might not be necessary if you're in. I mean, I'll take it even further. There are 10 mans, 20 mans. You don't really need to do that there. I think that's a mistake, actually, because if you get it right, that's great, but you're incurring extra unnecessary risk. I think that's more suited for a tournament like the Millie. And we see time and time again, if you break down people's Millie lineups, it's a ton of 3 and 2, 4 and 1. You're picking some concentrated games. You're running it back with a couple guys because the hope is, hey, if this game goes nuts, it could be basically the most optimal team you could have if you get the other punts right.
Mm-hmm. That's true. But I think there is like a limit to that. It is a balancing act because what I find, I'm trying to think, just because we were just talking golf, I'm thinking more in golf terms right now. I'll bring it back to football. But when I say stupid shit, like, hey, I'm going to play 4% Danny Lee this week, like I would never do that in like a high stakes, low entry tournament. Like there's no need to do that. That is something you do, when you're trying to get a guy. I mean, someone like Danny Lee, when he's in terrible form and is just all over the place, so you never know when he's going to show up. You do that in a massive field tournament because you might be in something like a million or whatever, like a tournament with 14,000 people in it. You might be one of like 20 people that plays Danny Lee in something like that. In a 100-man tournament, you're going to be the only person that played it. Good job. Like that's not worth it.
Nope. Because just to jump in 100-man, you can be the only person who plays
a real player.
A real player. That's right. There's no bonus for taking an extreme 1%er when other people can be 1% who are actually useful.
Yeah, because the difference in a 14,000 person tournament, getting someone that 20 people played and getting someone that 500 people played, there's a real big difference there. Yeah. But you're probably the only guy that played either of those dudes in the 100-man.
Absolutely. And you see that time and time again. And it doesn't just have to be high stakes. Like I most of my smaller fields are high dollar buy-ins, but it's the same concept. And I mean, I saw it this week. I played in an expensive 50-man. Someone like Calvin Ridley, he was 6% owned. So 3 teams had him. That's, you can do that. You didn't need to take someone ridiculous, a 5th string receiver on one of these teams to be unique. You could take a nice, reasonable punt and say, hey, wow, 3 of 50. That's pretty juicy.
Right. And you still want to get weird. You just don't have to be as weird to get weird. Like you don't want to, and the other end of this, and a mistake a lot of people make, is basically playing their cash team in those kind of things. And I'm not I typically play my cash team in the 153 max tournaments or the $100 single entry tournament, just, in both golf and football, just to get it in somewhere. Cause sometimes you hit the nuts, and I'm a little more willing to buck the trends on my cash team anyway. Like I don't really care I didn't play Eric Ebron in cash last week. I thought it was a bad play, and I guess what I'm saying is a lot of people, and I get it, but they recommend the block. It's just not really my style. Like I just would rather play the plays that I think are right. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But you don't want to play. You generally, if you're playing just one tournament lineup and it's in a smaller field, you don't want to play your cash team either, because it's really hard to separate yourself in something like that.
And everyone's doing it because the mindset, when you only have one bullet, everyone's like, well, I don't want to do anything crazy. I only have one. That's kind of the time to say, you know what? I can predict ownership. I know that's for me. That's my ownership is so much easier to predict than a single entry, because people tend to say, well, I didn't, it's all or nothing. So they don't want to fade the obvious people. It's a great opportunity to swerve a little, just a little. Again, you don't want 6 different, but be slightly off, and you can get a guy at super low ownership who in a milli field is 6%. That's 12,000. It's a ridiculous number of people when you're talking percentages in that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot more exploitable to get. I mean, the smaller fields are more exploitable in a lot of ways, just because you don't have to be that crazy to be crazy. You don't want to go, yeah, whatever. We've said it. We're saying it again, but you don't want to go in there with the mindset of a millionaire make or play, because you just don't have to be that weird, but you can still be the only guy on something or multiple things.
And that's where I think there's and I get it. I get the allure of, oh my God, I can put in, it's not even just the milli. I can put in $9 in the slant and win whatever, 100K. That's great. And if you can support it with your bankroll, you should do it. But if you're really trying to build and grind it, you can do the cash game route, but you can also do these smaller fields. I think that's where you can get the 10x, the 20x return. You're not eligible for the 5,000x return, but you know what? You don't have to min cash for 1.5. You can actually build up a little, and then you can take those shots. I think that's what a lot of people are missing. And it's the cash lines are there. The winning scores are, of course, going to be lower. You're not going to need a top 0.01% to take something like that down. And, I know we're jumping between football and golf. On the golf side, you can take down that with 5 of 6. That happens.
Yeah.
Big field tournaments, forget it. That's never going to happen. But time and time again, I've seen 5 of 6 win a 50-man, win a 30-man. That happens all the time.
Yep. Question from the chat. We have Spence Nat. I think that's it.
Spence.
What's up, Spence Nat? Hello. Hello also, Tribato. But he wanted to know, or they wanted to know, where do you go for ownership projections? I would say you should check them out here at Osmo.com. We have really good ones for every sport. I trust a couple. There's a couple other places there it is again.
All right. Again, I thought my apartment was on fire.
No. Okay. It goes off like 2 hours after I brew it. So like lately, I think I've gotten a later start to my day the last couple of days.
Do you drink coffee black?
Usually some almond milk.
Ooh.
Yep.
Okay. Fair enough.
Have you ever been a coffee drinker?
No.
I know that you don't now, but
no.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, we have ownership projections at Osmo. That stuff is it's so important to I mean, for my process, it's huge because I really like to go into it with I want to get a rough estimate of how likely I think everyone is to sort of hit their value, and then compare that to the ownership and like calculate expected value off of that. I know you're not quite as like nitty gritty with that, but you are certainly cognizant of it.
Absolutely.
And it's you have to be. You cannot just ignore ownership because it's and a lot of people are out there saying, I don't know, I saw like a Twitter thread recently about like, you just go there and you play the best plays and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, if what you mean is like, you should play the guys that get the most points, like no shit. But
yeah, like that's incredibly short-sighted. If you're saying that, you're not understanding.
You're being very results oriented. And that is just not a winning strategy. It's not a winning attitude to have, because what you need to do is put yourself in the best position to succeed. And you are in a much better position to succeed if the guys that you played that are good are not as popular. It's that simple.
We've said this on this show before. There's 100%. It's a fact that you can have succeeded or failed before the sport starts. It doesn't mean you're going to win or lose money, but you can look and say, I've done what I wanted to do, and I'm happy about that. And there's been plenty of times with me where I'm just like, well, I really made a mistake with what I tried. I tried to get over the field with this guy, and I have no leverage. So how can that be useful? If you love a guy and you played 25% and he's 35% owned, you're rooting against that guy now. So
right.
that is not going to be successful. If you got that right, you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah, and it's not, and this is not saying, because I think the pushback against this is, this is for good reason too, because I think a lot of people go too far in the,
Oh,
quote unquote game theory thing. It's like game theory is not just finding the low owned. That's not what that means. There's more to game theory than that. I would suggest people, there's like a game theory for dummies book that's like a legitimately cool read. Like it's worthwhile. There's a lot to game theory, but I digress. It's not saying go play a bunch of 1% owned players. Like that is probably dumb. Like it's not the ownership that makes a guy attractive. It's not the ownership that makes a guy attractive necessarily, but what I like to do is I see if I have two guys next to each other that I think have very similar expected outcomes and very similar ceilings, hopefully, the lower owned guy is just a better play. Because if you think two guys are equally likely to work out and you get the guy that's lower owned to have that, then you've separated yourself from more of the field. If a guy is 8% owned instead of 16% owned, and that 8% owned guy goes off, you have a leg up on 92% of the field. If the 16% owned guy goes off, you have a leg up on 84% of the field. You would rather have a leg up on more people. So people that say that ownership doesn't matter are wrong. People that say that you should play all 1%ers are also wrong. But there is validity there is a necessity to pay attention to ownership.
yeah. And you mentioned it about me. I don't live and die with that, but it's a piece of the puzzle, and it's just about using that piece correctly. If you don't have the piece, well, you can't put the puzzle together. You're just eliminated. If you're using it wrong, if that's your number one priority, that's not it either. That's not like, oh, I like this guy, but he's going to be popular. We see that all the time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I keep fading the chalk. That is not what you shouldn't be saying that just on chalk alone. But you have to be cognizant of who is the chalk. And when someone has concentrated ownership, there's more validity to possibly looking for pivots and you just said this, if you have a guy in a similar price point with the same expected outcome, naturally you're willing to take the plunge against a smaller thing if it's close, because if it's a coin toss, why wouldn't you already talked about this, and that's the kind of stuff that you really need to understand to be successful. And it's important in all forms of things, and it goes back to the tournament size. In a 10-man, it's different than in a 100,000 man.
Yep. And Spence, that brings up a good point in the chat that it's the potential off of the ownership, not how low owned they are.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's a really, really good way to put it. So,
I think ownership right now in DFS is like I don't want to say like the buzzword, but I feel like it's everywhere. It's very hip to be with it, but just like most things, and I know I always harp on this, if you don't understand what it actually is doing, you're just going to it's just another piece that you're using incorrectly. So it's good to have ownership numbers. It's good to look at them. It's good, but you have to understand that they're not leading you to plays necessarily. It's just working in conjunction with other things. That's really the important part of it.
Yep. And it's building and it's also worth noting that what you are doing, you're building a portfolio, right? It's like any sort of investment. And the number one thing that bothers me that so many touts say, because I get it, because when you're a tout, what do you want to do? You want to be able to say, hey, I nailed this play.
Nailed it.
Yeah. And it's like, well,
that's what we do on the show.
Yeah. Always. Yeah. But you can't say I'm putting the lock button on somebody, or you can't say I wouldn't touch this guy for the most, whatever. Sometimes I wasn't going to play any Patton Kazire last week, but that certainly wasn't an ownership play. I get really bothered when people say if you're not going over on someone, you shouldn't even bother playing them. Those people are just, I don't know, those people don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about.
We're becoming villains in the DFS world.
Probably.
Yeah, I think we're just irrelevant.
That's true.
Yeah.
In our little corner, we have a good time. And it's not this is nothing. I'm not trying to talk shit about other people. They're just some people just don't understand these games very well. And
that's good. I'm happy about that. That's why and Slack is super useful for this. People have questions. Always feel free to DM me, because it is hard to really explain it without a conversation back and forth. But it really is important that you kind of get your mind fully around these things. You see them thrown around on Twitter, and you see it based. A lot of times, the stuff is used to support a biased point already, and it's like, well, that's not, like, oh, like Mahomes, perfect example. Like, people use this stuff to justify it.
Oh
And it's
God,
just like
Mahomes
you're
stuff.
not understanding that part of it. It doesn't mean that you're always right too. Like, I certainly, the people who just claim variance, or it's a top or bottom 5% outcome, like, maybe, but you also have to be willing to say, like, I was just wrong. That's a huge thing. People don't like to admit they're wrong. I don't really understand that.
Yeah, and it's I mean, that's an expected value thing. This is a conversation you and I have had a number of times privately, but like you can lose more bets than you make, but if the ones that you make pay off better than, like you can lose a bet 9 out of 10 times. If you get paid out 12-1 the time you win, like that was what you were supposed to do.
Like most DFS tournaments, like if you win it once every like 6 years, you're doing amazing. Like, you're gonna lose more than you win. It's, can you minimize it? Sounds like bizarre world outside my apartment. Can you minimize the losses and bide your time to eventually get there? And when you talk about a portfolio, we know obviously not everyone max enters, not everyone can afford that, not everyone likes to do that. Having 150, I mean, I never do, but that gives you a luxury to really determine pretty nice percentages. It's still the same concepts as you go lower.
Yeah.
It's just you're ramping up your variance. That's really all you're doing, because you can't, if you have 3 lineups, your min exposure is obviously a third. That's pretty radical. You're forced into, you can't get 10% of a guy even if you'd like to. So if you want to play a 1%er, you're going to have massive leverage, and that's going to ramp up your variance. And that's just something you need to accept, or drop stakes and make more teams.
Yeah. And I always look at that first, personally, when I'm building for the week. Like I get like my cash team, and then I get my 3 or 6. Usually it's 3 or 6 sort of, higher stakes lineups that I'm playing, and I build out those, 4 to 7 lineups first. And I will often play upwards of 150 lineups, and I'll occasionally play like to go into Josh Engelman territory and play like 3 to 500. Just jumping into different tournaments and stuff, but. I try to worry about the higher dollar stuff first, and then kind of spray a little bit with my exposure at the other stuff, and just hope to get a little bit lucky, because you're going to have to win a huge freaking tournament.
So I've heard. Yeah. It's true. But yeah, I think that's stuff that we always try to little by little touch upon, because again, it's great to talk slates on days when we have slates. We're going to be talking them. But in between that, you got to take the little lessons, just the pure DFS stuff. I focus more on that. Like when I'm trying to get better, it's not worrying about slates. It's trying to find little things to just be more focused on what I'm doing, lineups, how am I making them, am I missing stuff? And the plays will take care of themselves. There's so much information out there. Like there's so much information, especially with football. Like you can get that part. It's just, can you do it? Can you construct properly?
Absolutely. That is the truth. Cool. Well, that was another segment of, fired side shit talk.
That's right. We're done.
Yeah. And we're not trying to be jerks, honestly. I think, but we're both pretty nice guys. I just think there's some weird information out there, and it's like, it's not very helpful to the players. So just be careful out there with there's a lot of information, and not everyone really is someone that whatever. I will say no more. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Yeah. Appreciate that. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks Josh for producing. Ben, good to talk to you. Chat, thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you tomorrow.